thought about writing a book?
Okay, that's a good one. Have you ever thought about writing a book?
Yeah, I followed your blog for a while, and you're a really fantastic writer.
Great, thanks a lot. I mean, I've thought about it, but that's pretty much the extent so far. Is very, very far in the back of my mind that, yeah, maybe someday. When I have something worth saying, maybe. You know, I've only been doing this a few years, so we'll see. Possibly.
That's a good question. Something for Peter. Our Zen monk. This could be a question about Buddhism. That would work just as well. Who's got something for Peter? Yes.
I'm going to be helping my brother as a pacer in a 100-mile run that he's got coming up in Raleigh, North Carolina in April. Just some do's and don'ts for a pacer to kind of help him out.
Do's or don'ts for a pacer?
In a longer run.
Don't let him drop.
You really need to...
That's really your only job as a pacer.
And telling jokes. Jokes are key. And now, how about a question for Scott? And by the way, Scott's last example is the first page, the first chapter of his book. And so if you thought that was an interesting answer, definitely buy the book. Something for Scott. Yes, sir.
How's your training different for a 100-mile versus a 24-hour effort? Or just how's a 24-hour training schedule look compared to another ultimate?
How does your training schedule differ for a 24-hour, which is on a track, versus a 100-mile effort, which is usually on a trail?
There's, in some ways, not a whole lot different besides what I try to do is I try to get on the roads and do some speed work and try to get my legs used to, being here in Boulder, it's hard not to run on trails, so I still like to get on the trails, and sometimes I wonder, like last year when I was training for a race in December, I ran so much trail and maybe I didn't run enough pavement. So I'd say probably getting on more pavement, more flat terrain, just so the legs get used to that, that same type of rhythm and that stride rate and stride length that you would on the roads. I don't do a lot of loop. I know my wife Jenny gives me a hard time. She's like, I don't think you did enough track runs. And I didn't run around a track for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours. Just because I think mentally it's the same whether you're running on the trail or running on the track. You just have to get in that groove and just keep going. But who knows? So maybe I'll have to get on the track. The great Yannis Kouros, that's all he did was basically, he'd go to the track every morning and run the track for 2 hours. And that's how he trained. So maybe that's what I need to do. And he's a world record holder, so.
Anybody, your favorite trails in this area?
Geez. I like Fern Canyon a lot, Bear Peak, just because it's proper steep and technical and.
Green Mountain, maybe?
Yeah, I've run Green Mountain a lot. Green's really good because there's a lot of variety. You can do steep stuff. You can do a little more gradual climbs. Really nice smooth trail, technical trail. That's my favorite stuff. Yeah.
14er.
How many 14ers have you done this year?
Oh gosh, 110 or so, I think. Yeah.
Well, I have a particular fondness for Mount Sanitas because I can see it from my bedroom window. I also, getting into winter, I tend to go a little bit further east sometimes in the winter because I get tired of running on icy trails and slipping on rocks and falling down like I did 10 days ago. But so I tend to go out east and run a thing I call the Trail Around Boulder, which is almost a completed loop around the entire city all on dirt. And I mention it also because we're trying to complete the loop, and so you may see this in the newspaper or whatnot, that there are certain sections of that loop, 38-mile loop around the whole city, that are missing, and we need to push the open space department and the city council to finish those. It really is a terrific loop, and you can go to Trail Around Boulder. I think it's trailaroundboulder.com or .org, and download a map and go run it yourself. It's terrific. I'd have to say Bear Canyon. If you haven't run and you don't want to run up a steep mountain, you got to run Bear Canyon because I think it's one of the most picturesque trails in the Boulder Front Range. And then I'd say a close second is the Old Mesa Trail. And it's an unmaintained trail, but it's an old route. And if you just keep going on the mesa instead of dropping down to the South Mesa Trailhead, just take that little ribbon of single track that goes down to El Dorado Canyon. Just be careful when you get to the private land down at the bottom. But there's nothing like it, especially early in the year. And then, of course, the Pawnee Pass up in the Indian Peaks.
Amazing suggestion, just to tie that one together. Old Mesa Trail, we fought during the West Trail Study area and we got it permitted. They wanted to close it down. So as Peter was mentioning, stay in touch with the local politics because public access to public land is an important thing for us. Other questions? How did you get over your plantar fasciitis? What a question.
That's a good one. It took a while. Plantar fasciitis is a really tough injury, and as somebody who's treated a lot as a physical therapist, it still puzzles me sometimes what really makes it better. But number one, if you're not wearing a night splint, I think that's really what did it for me. It sucks, I know, wearing the boot, and your significant other probably doesn't like it either. But that's one of the key things because your foot goes in plantar flex position at night when you're sleeping. The other thing, I actually ran a fair amount on the beach because I was visiting Jenny, who lived down in Ventura at the time, and so I would go running on the beach. So strengthening your feet by basically doing strength training, so you like doing flexor training, walk on surfaces that are soft that don't aggravate it because sometimes it's painful to walk around barefoot. And then your everyday shoes. If you don't wear a supportive shoe, I think that's always something that people forget about. So they wear their shoe that doesn't provide any support. And initially when you're trying to heal it, you don't want it getting overstretched. But then there's other times where you kind of need to stretch it out. So it's a tricky one. And maybe see a massage therapist. I probably shouldn't say who I see because he'll kill me because he's already too full. But there's some great ones in town. In fact, a couple here, Shirley, who's upstairs, of course. But finding a good massage therapist to work it out, I think, too, helps.
Come on out, hashing on the 8th.
Okay, he's making an announcement that there's a Boulder, what's the website?
BoulderH3.org.
BoulderH3.org. Hashing is an international sport.
It is.
And so you run often at night, drinking beer. And that's what those little white markings you see
That
are.
never disappear here in Boulder.
They don't wash away in Boulder. Okay, so public service announcement. BoulderH3.org, the Hash House Harriers. Other questions?
Yeah, I got one. How do you balance family and training?
Wow. Okay, this is interesting.
That's easy for me. I have no kids and no job.
Yeah, actually none of us have kids, so we're probably not fully qualified, but I'm on that program here shortly, so Mass, maybe you can, well, no. Yeah, no announcement, but, sorry, bud. So I could maybe answer that more intelligently, but I think, as far as just even having other commitments, with work, and even if you don't have kids, just even having a significant other, they probably question, why do you spend all this time running? I think what's really key is making sure in a relationship the other individual understands why you do this, and they don't have to be a runner or they don't have to be passionate about the thing that you do, but just so you understand your passions, I think is really critical, and you just give each other space to do those things. But then you have to be willing to give that the other individual or your job time. So it's a tough thing, and when you think of us as ultra runners, like, oh, all we do is run, there are times where I just run 45 minutes, an hour a day. It's not like we're always out running 20 miles and just totally, climbing 14ers and running trails for 8 hours at a time. So it's like finding that balance between everything, and a lot of early mornings and sometimes evening runs. You just learn how to get it in.
I'm a pretty selfish person at this point in my life. I don't have a meaningful answer to this, so I just can't.
That was an amazing question to ask this, but it was